Good afternoon all, and thank you for joining the 5th Primary Sense Lunchwalk session. Today we'll focus on how to identify patients due or missing the influenza vaccination using Primary Sense. My name is Harry Howell, and I'm the Senior Project Officer here at Gold Coast Primary Health Network. Gold Coast Primary Health Network would like to acknowledge and pay respects to the lands and the traditional practices of the families of the Yugambeh language region of the Southeast Queensland and their elders past, present, and emerging. And just some housekeeping before I do start. This meeting is being recorded, so it may be used and shared as a resource later. So please keep your cameras off and your microphones muted. And there will be an opportunity for questions at the end. Within Primary Sense, there is numerous reports that you can run that will identify patients missing or due for influenza vaccinations at your practice. Please also check the Australian Immunisation Register, as always, to confirm. As you can see on my screen, I have circled the reports in red, which would identify patients missing or due for influenza vaccination. The first report you can see I've circled here is COVID-19 vulnerable patients. This will show you for those patients that are vulnerable to receive the COVID vaccination, but also due to receive the influenza vaccination. This report has 3 tables. The first table is vulnerable patients aged 5 to 59 years, or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander patients aged 5 to 59 years. The second table is patients aged 60 years and over. And the third table is patients aged 5 to 59 without existing conditions. I will showcase this report at the end of the demonstration, and I will show you where the influenza column is. The second report is pregnant and vaccinations, which you can see now circled on my screen. This report will show you pregnant women without a record of vaccination during this pregnancy. The third report is chronic lung disease and asthma. This report identifies patients with chronic lung disease and/or asthma who may benefit from a review of their smoking and vaccination status. Three of the 10 quality improvement measures in PIPQI are also directly aligned to influenza vaccination. 3 of these are QIM4, identify patients aged 65 years and over who have been immunized against influenza in the previous 15 months. QIM5, patients with diabetes who have been immunized against influenza in the previous 15 months. And QIM6, patients with COPD who may have been immunized against influenza in the previous 15 months. If you do click on Primary Sense reports, you will see the PIPQI reports down here. If you click on either of these 2 reports, it will show you patients who are missing the influenza vaccination, which aligns directly to any of these 3 quality improvement measures in the PIPQI specification list. As you can see now on my screen, this is patients missing PIPQI or accreditation measures. As you can see from left to right, we have the patient name, the patient phone number, when they last visited the practice, their GP, clinic, age, ATSI status, RACGP active, and then these PIPQI measures here. You can see the last column has FluVax. If this field is populated, it would indicate why the patient appears in this report. So for instance, you can see here that G. Thompson, who's 90 years old, does not have a FluVax recorded, and he is over 65 years old. If we scroll down you can see that this patient here, H. King, who is 54 years old, does not have an influenza vaccination, and they also have COPD. So that aligns with the PIP-QI indicator. The second report we'll look at is COVID-19 vulnerable patients. So if we scroll down here, this first table looks at vulnerable patients aged 5 to 59 or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander patients aged 5 to 59 who may be eligible for COVID vaccination. If we scroll down here, once again, you can see this column here, last flu vaccination. It will show you when these patients last received their flu vaccination. If we were to click on this header, just like this, it'll sort to show all the patients at the top who have most recently received their flu vaccination, and it's recorded in the clinical software being medical director or best practice. If we scroll down here, you can see for this patient, J. Thomas, for flu vaccination, there's been no record in clinical software, medical director, or best practice for this patient, but you can always confirm with the Australian Immunisation Register. The beauty of this report too does have coded conditions for these patients. So we can see that L. Taylor, who last visited the practice on the 28th of the 8th, and GP is Dr. C. White, who's 56 and is 56 years old. We can see the coded conditions is cancer and cardiovascular disease, yet they are yet to receive a flu vaccination. If we scroll down, the second table is patients aged 60 plus who may be eligible for COVID-19 vaccination. But as again, we can reference this column here, flu vaccination. So very similar, we can click on this, just like this, clicking on the header, and it will sort. As you can see here, we can see that M. Williams last received their flu vaccination on the 16th of March in 2021. Yet if we scroll down, we can see that Q. Williams has yet to receive a flu vaccination. And the third table is patients aged 5 to 59 who may be eligible for COVID-19 vaccination without any existing conditions. So once again, we'll draw reference to this point here, last flu vaccination. Another report you can run at the practice is pregnant and vaccinations. So this will show you pregnant women without a record of vaccination during their current pregnancy. You will see here how many weeks pregnant, estimate due date, and the last date that the patient received their flu vaccination. As is demo data we are using today, there is no patients in my dummy data that do have or are pregnant. The last report that you can run in primary sense to identify patients who may be missing the influenza vaccination is chronic lung disease and asthma. If we scroll down, we do have patients with a chronic lung disease and/or asthma who may benefit from a review of their smoking and vaccination status. So if we go left to right again, we have remove. So we can click remove if we want to remove this patient from appearing in this report again. We have the patient's ACG score. Again, if you're unclear what the ACG score is, if we scroll to the top, you can click here, what are the ACG patient complexity levels, and it will detail each level and what they correspond to. We have the patient name, the patient phone number, when they last visited the practice, existing appointment. So this is the date that the patient is booked in to visit the practice again. So we can see that J. King is booked in to visit the practice on the 20th of November, 2022. The GP name, clinic, age of the patient, Indigenous status, diagnosis, smoking status recorded, and we can see here history of flu vax. So once again, we can click on this header and sort and see all the patients when they last received their flu vaccination, and it's been uploaded to the clinical software in the practice. So we can see that T. Jones, who has a diagnosis of asthma, received their flu vaccination on this date here. You can see on the bottom here that there is 13 pages in total, or 311 patients that do appear in this report. A trick I like to do is go to the top and say, show me all patients per page. You will now see all of these patients on this one page. From this, you can now click Export to Excel.